What's up, Wargamers? We're back, and I've got some questions for you about whether you guys think it would be viable in 8th edition Warhammer 40K to play an Imperial Knights list that was all Armigers. So that the restrictions would be that you could be any household choice you want, Free Blades, Adeptus Mechanicus, or Questor Mechanicus, Questor Imperialis, whatever you want to be. But you have to be a mix of Armiger Helverins and or Armiger Warglaives. The reason that I pose this to you is because I think I've hinted to it in a video in the past, but I'm actually setting out and doing it, and I've got it here on the hobby table. I'm building these little bad boys up. So we've purchased up, bought Forgebane, I bought boxes of Helverins, I bought boxes of Armigers. There's some of the Warglaives going together too. Painting them up in a scheme that looks like Adeptus Mechanicus, but just in case you guys aren't familiar, here's what they look like in their boxes. These are some more boxes for me to open. We've got the good old Helverins here, which are the shooty guys with 2die3 shots each autocannon. So that's really 4die3 shots. And then we've got the Armiger Warglaives here with the thermal lance and a chain weapon. And they've both got, like, the standard kit on top is the heavy stubber, or you can add the melt-a-gun as an option. I think the heavy stubber is pretty much the go-to. Not only is it default, but it also is a lot less points, and you got to get close to use a melt-a-gun, 12 inches. So probably only the Warglaives are going to want to get that close in hand-to-hand combat. So let me know what your thoughts are. I want to go over a list, but most of the time, and there are handicaps, so it's not that I don't know the drawbacks. Do you think that you could play an all-Armiger list and have no command points? So that's the drawback. If you don't take at least one of the Titanic vehicles, then you are going to be SOL, and you're going to lose the 3 command points that you can have, 3 or more command points that you could have if you were to take at least one of the Titanic vehicles. So you could go and take one of the cheapest possible Knight Errants, and that would check the box, and you'd get 3 command points. You obviously couldn't have as many Armigers, but then again, a Knight Errant is better than an Armiger Warglaive. So that is kind of a trade-off. Now, what I was looking to do is trying to, like, max mini in a 2,000 point list, what I could fit into it, and then trying to think about the scenarios of which it obviously will give me a handicap. There is no perfect world in which an all Armiger list is just going to be a be-all, end-all list that somebody's going to just say, hey, there's no army out there that has not prepared themselves for that. Because certainly there's going to be armies out there with plenty of melta-weapons that are going to take them down. I've also building out the rest of my Adeptus Mechanicus, which has been kind of sitting on the back burner, but now that I've got these guys, I might ally them together. I want to be flexible with them, so I'm definitely either going to take a majority Adeptus Mechanicus and like 3 Helverins for fire support, or I'm going to take the majority of Warglaives and Helverins mixed together, and then to get some command points, use a really minimal force of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Scutari, so that way I can not only get command points but also have access to the data, their HQ, to be able to heal up at least 1 wound a turn on some of my units. So let's take a look. You know, if you wanted to get into these guys, they're certainly not cheap. You know, to play a list of 12 of them, it actually requires me to have an odd number, so I would need to have 3 of the Helverin models, so 2 boxes, so 150 there. And then you need to pick up 9 of the Warglaives, which means you need to have 5 boxes. So it's not cheap, and I think it might even be cheaper to play a list of just all Titanic Knights. But let's take a look at my army list, if it'll come up here. And this is my perspective army list. I'm just using Battle Scribe, so forgive me if it doesn't really look super professional, but I thought this would be the easiest way to be able to kind of parlay that to you guys and show you what it is. So without allying with the Adeptus Mechanicus, I would take them as Hawkshroud. The reason I would, if I allied with Adeptus Mechanicus, I would probably take them as, I think, House Volker. The reason you would want to make them Questor Mechanicus if you did that is because there are certain abilities on the HQ for the Adeptus Mechanicus that allow you to heal the Questor Mechanicus vehicle, but it says nothing about the Questor Imperialis based on what I saw. If I'm wrong with that, then I'll go back to playing Hawkshroud. The reason for playing Hawkshroud is you got 12 wounds on these guys. And the whole you know, it looks like a K-Door Warjack, right? So I'm basically going to come out here and play War Machine with all these Warjacks in a game of 40K, but, you know, Games Workshop did it. They did it to themselves on that one. So, yeah, so basically, you come out, you've got your, they've got 12 wounds on these guys, right? But their stats decay as they take wounds. So once they start to take wounds, they start to have a worse weapon skill, a worse ballistic skill. And let's take a look at their war track here, their wound track here. So you get them down, you got to knock them down halfway, right? So you have to cause at least 6 wounds to these guys to be able to knock their stats down. That'll knock the movement down to 10 inches, which is still pretty fast. And it takes the weapon skill and ballistic skill back to 4+. So that makes them a lot less effective. It doesn't matter whether you're a Warglaive, shooting your thermal lance, or swiping your chainsword, or whether you're a Helverin sitting back and pounding the enemy. So when you're Hawkshroud, the benefit is that you count as having twice as many wounds as what you currently have for the sake of this wound track. So actually somebody has to knock you back to a total of 3 wounds remaining in order just to get you to go to 4+ and 10. So you're really going to be able to fight at a much stronger effectiveness for about a quarter of the battle. So whether that means 1 extra turn, 2 extra turns, that really will to be determined, but it will also mean that your opponent will really have to focus fire to bring down these Helverins and these Armiger Warglaives one by one, because if they don't, they're not going to be really, you pretty much have to kill them to reduce their effectiveness at all. That's essentially what it means, because 3 more wounds, you know, you would finish them off if you had a choice, because otherwise you'd be leaving on the tabletop. Now, I have, with not taking a Titanic vehicle as a warlord and taking one of the Armigers as a warlord, I would be taking a Helverin as my warlord choice. And the reason being is that I think that the basically the duty of the Forsworn, which is the warlord trait for the Hawkshroud, is very complementary to the Helverin. Of course, it's complementary to really any big shooty unit, but since the Helverin is the shootiest of these Armigers, that it says at the start of the first battle round, but before the first turn begins, your warlord selects a unit in your opponent's army, and you add 1 to hit rolls made for your warlord against that unit. So a Helverin who's rolling 4die3 shots per turn is going to be able to add 1 to those, essentially meaning that they're pretty much hitting on 2s, right? So that's pretty nasty to be able to do that. And then also the Helverins don't have any penalties for moving and shooting with their, specifically with their Armiger autocannon. It doesn't say anything about the heavy stubber on top. So they're going to be able to be he's going to be able to be very nimble, isolate firing on that target until it's basically destroyed, because let's face it, you're going to shoot it till it's destroyed, at least with that warlord, because you really wouldn't want to shoot at anything else. Otherwise, you should have chosen that as the army or as your unit that you had selected, unless maybe they deep struck something in that's now more of a threat that carries melta weapons or melta bombs, something like that, to help take you down. So let's break it down here. We've got our warlord in a Helverin. He's got the armor of the Sainted Ions. He's going to have a 2+ armor save. He's going to take the standard warlord trait for the Hawkshroud household. That's duty of the Forsworn. Straight heavy stubba. I haven't upgraded any of the Armigers in this list at all to take the melta weapon, because I'm actually coming in with 12 Armigers at 1,998 points, so 2 points under 2,000. That leaves me with nothing to spare, and I didn't want to sacrifice switching out one of the Helverins because I'm only taking 3 Helverins in this list. That's all I can afford to fit, or else it would go about 8 points over the allowable points cost. So those are just 2 additional standard Helverins, really there to provide fire support, really to help hit the troops in your opponent's list, or really the light vehicles. And then from there on out, it's going to be 9 of the Warglaives. So the Warglaives are pretty nasty. You could either sit back, certainly with a 30-inch range, and put some hurt on things. And also you're going to have the heavy stubber on top of 36-inch range. Not a very powerful weapon, mind you, but Assault die 3 is not really a lot of shots coming out of each one, but if you can imagine that you're going to have 9 of them at least on the first turn, assuming that you go first and get the ability to shoot, or that you still have them all alive at the end of the first turn, that you would have 9 die 3 thermal spear shots at 30-inch range, and because you have a 14-inch move, you really have almost a 44-inch threat range on that first turn, plus whatever you've deployed, how deep you've deployed them in your deployment zone. So unless something is diagonally across these 4x6 tables, they're going to be in range on turn 1 to be able to shoot. And since it's an assault weapon, there's no negative to hit with that thermal spear either when the Armiger Warglaives decide to move and shoot with it. So that's also to be considered, and that's a nasty weapon, because if you're sitting across the table with Terminator equivalents, even if that Terminator equivalent can certainly be any of the Adeptus Custodes, something like that. These guys are going to cause die 6 damage and do assault D3 shots apiece. So certainly if somebody knew that this list was coming to the tabletop, they'd build a very melta weapon, last cannon type of list against it. They might even bring some weapons I'm not thinking of. You probably could even counteract it with the traditional 5 Imperial Titanic Knights. I don't think these Armiger Warglaives are really meant to take on that type of unit in hand-to-hand combat, although they certainly could put in a lot of shooting with their Strength 8 weapons, but given that that's a Toughness 8 Imperial Knight, you wouldn't have an awesome chance of being able to wound. So this really seems like a fun list for me to build out, at least from a modeler's perspective. I mean, I'm having a blast. These are really easy to paint up so far. I primed them black, and I painted them in phases. So basically, I'm painting them with all the armor off. So the carapace is all off of them, all the knee pads, things like that. I primed them flat black, just my regular budget Wargamer Rust-Oleum or Krylon camouflage flat black. Then I sprayed them again with one of these. So Rust-Oleum, this wasn't the exact color, but I think it was like a flat iron or something like that. These Rust-Oleum Universal Metallics, they have a couple flat colors. There's like a flat bronze type of color, like flat aged bronze, and then there is a flat iron. And the flat iron is fantastic. And I came across this, and then I just dry brushed it with like chainmail, just with a cheap dry brush. And then I came in and touched it up in here with Retributor Gold. I believe that's the gold that I used. And just paint the pipes with the flat black, the wiring with the flat black. And then this one hasn't gone through the wash yet, but once you wash it, you're going to add even more detail into the recesses, and then provide some weathering and that sort of thing, that appearance with these units. So that's what I wanted to pose to you guys. Drop some comments below if you like hearing videos about Warhammer 40K, tactics, news, otherwise. I know it's been a little bit since I've started doing regular videos, but I have been jumping back in, trying to do at least 1 or 2 a week. So let me know if you're watching, hit that subscribe button, and stay tuned to my channel for more stuff on Warhammer 40,000.